far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees. Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and the architect of the 100 ABC Women Project. Today's conversation is about pre-planning for retirement. Am I really ready to retire? When is the best time to retire? How do you know you have saved enough to retire? Here to help us understand this topic better are individuals who have either experienced it or act as advisors. Our moderator, Jennifer Singh, will introduce you to these wise individuals. Jennifer is a former dean, artist, community advocate, educator, and gardener. Over to you, Jennifer.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here moderating this very important topic, retirement. I am one of the fortunate ones who I'm retired and loving it, but with retirement comes responsibility if you are to enjoy a retirement. So I'd like to introduce you to two panelists, Norma Nicholson, who's retired, and Herbie Devereaux, who will give you some insights about the topic. And we also have on hand David Grimmond, who will be offering some advice on the topic of retirement. So first of all, let us meet Norma. Norma Nicholson. Will you introduce yourself?
I'm Norman Nicholson. Thank you so much for joining our Fireside Chat this afternoon. I am a retired nurse. I hold a Bachelor of Science and Sociology and Psychology, and I hold a master's degree in adult education. I use those titles and as a leadway into the work that I do. I worked as a manager in a variety of healthcare settings. I was very blessed that the last place I worked, I had the opportunity to work with minority families and their children who are incarcerated in the largest jail in Ontario and also in Canada. I hesitate to say that because it's the anger of seeing the way that those kids were treated that gave me the passion and planning for my retirement. So for my retirement, I planned that I wanted to use my journal and all the notes I made to write a book. And that book would be used as a tool to educate not only parents, but our young people. And I call them at risk because most are caught up in the justice system because they do not have the right path. They were not following the right path. So as we have this discussion today, I will share more about myself because just like Jennifer, I am enjoying retirement as an author, an advocate, governance boards, public speaker, and selling my books, marketing my books. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. And now we'll meet Herbie Devereaux.
Good afternoon, everyone. Herbie Devereaux here. A little bit about myself. I currently work for TD Wealth Private Investment Council as an associate portfolio manager, advisor, and I have over 15 years of experience in the industry. I graduated from the University of Quebec in Montreal with a bachelor's degree in business administration. I did my master's degrees at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, and I hold a couple of professional designations such as the CFA, the Certified Financial Planning certification as well. On a more personal note, I'm an avid long distance runner. I like doing voluntary work in my community, very much involved, and feel free to ask me any questions you want over this chat. I'm looking forward to interacting with every single one of you. If you want to reach out to me, we'll leave my contact information on the chat right here, and take it away. We can take it from there.
Thank you, Herbie. And today we also have an advisor, David Grimmond. So David, could you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Grimmond. I work at CIBC Wood Gundy, where I have worked there in Toronto for the last 20 years. I am an investment advisor. I'm also a portfolio manager. I graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce degree. I majored in finance, and I also hold a number of industry designations. I'm also a chartered investment manager, and I'm part of the CIBC Diversity and Inclusion Committee as well, where I like to help people sort of go on the same path that I did. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Norma, you are a successful retiree. How did you plan for retirement?
Some of the steps were, I was very blessed that in healthcare, there's always, even if you're 25 years old, there's always a session that you can attend to learn how to plan for healthcare. That was one of our annual update. And some of my colleagues would think, well, I'm 25, I don't need to start planning. But amazingly, I went to those sessions and had the opportunity to talk to my colleagues. So I started planning with my husband that when I get to be 65, I'm out of there. And so we planned on paying off our mortgage, paying off our vehicles. We had an RRSP since we were in our 30s. We thought about having emergency savings because we were both born on the island of Jamaica, still have family there, and think, what if we needed to go and visit? And then we both have life insurance, and we made sure that we didn't hold very much on a credit card. So I'm not a financial planner, nor did we hire one or connect with one, but it was just using our common sense because we have seen others, and I'll say other Black folks, who have used their visa, do whatever, and when they retire, they don't know what to do because they don't have much money except their pension. And see, that's another way I have been blessed in that working in healthcare, we have a HOOP pension, a lifetime pension. I also worked for the government of Ontario as a nurse running the facility I mentioned initially. So I have an Ontario pension, and I also have an old age pension.
Thank you, Norma. You are one of the lucky ones. We know that today, many young people entering the workforce or in the workforce don't have company pensions. We also know that there's no real mandatory retirement age anymore unless you are in a specific industry where, like air traffic control or pilots, where you have to retire. So there are a couple of questions. And I'm going to address you, Herbie. As a young person getting into the workforce, when should you start thinking about retirement? Should you wait until maybe you're in your 50s or 60s? What do you think?
Great question. And people often ask that question, is it too early to start thinking about retirement? Ideally, it's never too early to think about retirement. People should plan for this as soon as they enter the workforce. Mm-hmm. The power of planning for retirement comes with time. The more time you have in front of you, ahead of you, the most likelihood you have a success rate at establishing a great retirement or the retirement you planned for. If you think about the proposition of retiring, it's basically the project to construct a flexible, tax-efficient cash flow to meet your discretionary and non-discretionary expenses for the rest of your life. This is not a small project. It's very difficult to reach that point around the age of 60 or 65. In order to do so and to give yourself the best chance to succeed, the earlier, the better. But in practice, it's not always possible, but it's never too early to plan for retirement.
Okay, thank you. David, right off the bat, let's start with some advice, okay? I'm thinking of someone who's just graduated college, have their first job, pretty much living paycheck to paycheck, has student loans, is beginning to think, well, has moved into their first apartment. So there are those pressures. And is beginning to plan their life. Okay, they want kids, they want a house, they want. Where does retirement factor into all of this?
That is a very good question. I mean, I think that I can kind of fit into that category when I first graduated from university, in that, you know, you start to deal with real life. You have a lot of expenses, you want to plan a family, you want to kind of, you know, take the next stage. I think what's really important is to think of your financial health much like your physical health. We're supposed to go and, you know, have a checkup with our doctor and make sure everything's okay. And what's very important in that process is early detection if there is a problem. So I think that if we can think of our financial health in the same way, start to plan from a very early stage, start to assess your spending, see what you're able to save if possible, consulting a financial professional to see what and where you can do this in an efficient manner. It is a very hard thing to do. As you said, we all want, but I think it's a case of, if we do start planning from a very early age, for the rest of our life, that gives us a lot of options. It gives us a lot of flexibility. If we start planning too late in life, those options are there, they're just limited. So I think the key is just to set up a budget, start to pay yourself first. If you do have paychecks starting to come in, maybe do an automatic deposit into a savings account or into an investment account, such that at the end of the year, you have a bit of a pot of money, and you can use that either to pay down debt, you can use that for, you know, some of your savings, or just planning for your future.
Okay, thank you. Herbie, the question I have for you is, what types of monies are available to you when you retire? Certainly government funds that you can count on. If you don't have company funds to count on.
Right. And there's multiple sources of income available to people once they retire. And we do have a baseline that people usually have access to. So I'm just going to give you the general source of income, but it's not an exhaustive list. But these are the main source of income that people have access to. So you have government pensions, such as CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan, and that's available upon retirement. Usually, typically people start to draw from that at 65 years old, but there's a possibility to access those funds earlier or later. You also have OAS, which is Old Age Security. That's another government pension source of income. And for the most fortunate of us, some people have sponsored employer pensions, such as a defined benefit plan or a contribution company pension plan. And you do have life annuity as well. And lastly, you can use a stock portfolio that you've accumulated over your lifetime, and it has exposure to the stock market to fund your retirement. So these are the three main sources of income if you add the annuity. And this is the baseline which people can work with to plan for retirement.
Okay. You know, it's very difficult, I think, when you're entering the workforce to really begin to think of retirement. Because when you start working, you're at the beginning. And there's so many things that you want to accomplish before you get to retirement. So is there value in starting to think about retirement sooner rather than later? Normal, I'll start. I'll ask you the question, and then I'll ask Herbie the same question.
That's a good question, because I did not really start thinking about retirement until I was in my late 20s. Because my daughter was young and I focused mostly on her education, and I work full time, and all my degrees were obtained on a part-time basis. So I would say my husband and I sat down and really thought this out when I was about mid-30s. However, at that time, we already started to do automatic withdrawal of money from our account into an RRSP. That was the only thing we were doing then. So I love using Excel sheets. So we drew up an Excel sheet, and then we look at how much are we bringing in and how much do we need to start saving. And that's how we started in our 30s. I remember there are times when I would say to my husband, I have to pay my tuition. And he would say, okay, so then what I brought home this week, we'll put half of that in the RRSP. We had to plan because we know that he has government pensions, but he does not have workplace pension. That's another thing we had to look at.
Okay. Herbie, I'll ask you the same question.
Sure. And the challenge with retirement is that it's a blend of personal reflection and number crunching. It's mathematic. The earlier you start, the most likelihood your chance of success is. But at the same time, you do have values. You do want to achieve a certain lifestyle. You just don't want to save 100% and be miserable while you're living. At the same time, you don't want to live like a rock star every day either. So it's a balance, it's a spectrum, it's a continuum, and depends on people where they want to fit themselves in that continuum. And as you progress throughout your life, that sweet spot can change depending on the person. Yes, there is value in starting to think about retirement as early as possible for most people, but at the same time, you have to be truthful to yourself and find that happiness and happy place. So the value will depend on each individual, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Is there any sort of minimum limit or any minimums you would suggest that people start with in terms of putting away for retirement, especially if you have not a very good cash flow?
I don't think so. There's no minimum. And let me explain why. The challenge for most people is to get into the habit. Whatever it takes you to get into a good habit, you have to try to do it. If it's only $50 per month and on the surface, it looks like it won't have any impact. But if you build a habit of saving a little bit, and the compounding effect over years, and the fact that you can discipline yourself to increase that amount slowly and slowly will certainly pay dividends down the road. So the amount, in my opinion, it's not relevant. But if you have the mindset, if you use yourself to the mindset of saving and do it consistently, then there's no other options than to be more successful in your endeavor.
Okay. David, if I'm saving only $50 a month, do I need a financial advisor? Or should I wait until I can save a bigger pool of money before I bring in a financial advisor?
Well, I think a financial advisor can help the process in the sense that we have a lot of financial tools at our disposal. We can sort of model what, $50 per month savings will be. Are there any sort of tax efficiencies that we can consider even from a very early age? It doesn't really matter the dollar amounts. I mean, whether you're saving $50 a month or $5,000 a month, there's always something that can be done when you consult a financial advisor, in the sense that, what we want to do is try to find out, are there any deficiencies? If we continue on this path, where will we be as far as what you can save or what you have saved or have invested properly in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? And I think it's an interesting study in sort of, human psychology, in the sense that if we know that we're saving $50 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month at the end of 5 years, and you see the pot of money that you have, to me, that's a way to incentivize us to continue on that path. It's almost kind of, giving that reinforcement that if I continue saving, I'll get to a certain place that is attainable. But it can also put you in a mindset of, I need to do this for my future.
Okay. Herbie, did you want to add anything to that comment? Or
Sure,
that bit of advice?
Yes, of course. I just want to address a question we had from the public, and I think it ties in perfectly to what David and I were trying to explain. And I like the analogy that David used before. It's kind of your physical health. If you're looking to be healthy and be in good shape, it might be a good idea to engage the service of a licensed personal trainer who's a professional. Same thing for your retirement. You don't have to be alone in trying to figure this out. Engaging a financial professional adds a lot of value in that project. They're there to support you. They can find solutions. They can assist with the number crunching part of it. They can assist with your value, your personal value part of it, and help you out to figure out the right balance for you.
Great. The next question I have is, we can retire at any age. I've got a young friend who's just retired at age 55, which is absolutely wonderful. And some of us waited until, well, it's no longer mandatory, but age 65. But what if you get to age 65, age 70, and find out you don't have enough money to fund your desired lifestyle? What do you do? What are your options? Herbie.
Well, upon retirement, if you don't have enough to fund what you desired as retirement, you do have some options available to you, and they will involve sacrifices. It's always a trade-off. So you can either decide to delay retirement. If you were planning on retiring at 65 years old, maybe it's time to rethink that objective and keep on working until 68 years old, for example. That's not ideal, but sometimes you're stuck in a situation where you have to make some sacrifices. The other thing is you could find a part-time job and have some sort of income to support your lifestyle moving forward. And again, those solutions are not ideal. Your health might not allow you to work part-time. Your health might not allow you to delay retirement. And ideally, you want to be in a situation where everything has been covered. And lastly, you can downsize your home, harvest some equity, reinvest the money into a diversified portfolio, and drive some more income. So these are the main three possibilities to fund your retirement or even reduce your expectations. You thought you would need to travel 2 or 3 times a year to be happy. Now it's time to rethink that. Maybe 1 trip per year should be enough.
Okay, thanks. Norma, you were fortunate enough to be able to retire when you wanted to. And with the funds, I think you need to certainly live a certain lifestyle. Can you tell us what your planning has allowed you to do? What good retirement planning has allowed you to do?
First of all, I planned that I did not want to be staying at home every day. I planned that I needed to still socialize and see my friends. I planned that I should do things to be healthy or I would not enjoy retirement. I also collaborated with 2 of my mentors who were already retired to see what got them up each morning and how they were living a good life. Having mentioned the last workplace that I managed healthcare, I left that toxic environment very angry about the way our young people were being treated. And that rolled into a passion for my advocacy. So I walked away from there, not only as a retiree, but someone that wanted to advocate. So I needed partners to do that. So one of the tools that I used for my first 6 months after I retired, I had a one-day conference when I collaborated with justice people, family members, etc., because I wanted to get some basic education in place before I added more for individuals. So I did that one-day conference. York University has a program called REX-X, and what they do is Youth Rex rather, and they evaluate any program that we do in the community as long as it's around young people. So they evaluated that one-day conference, used the feedback that was given, and suggested some things that I could do. So I used my first book, Young Lives on the Line. I wrote that within the first year and a half after I retired. I've never thought I could write a book, but I had journal and I had the notes from where I worked, and I had a passion to make a difference. So that was two things I did. So I had the conference, I authored the book, I used all the information from that book as tools for education. So it got me into a lot of spaces. So for example, parents may not know that if you have a girl or boy, teenager, and they're getting into grade 12 and they're not sure what do they want to do with themselves, they may not have had too much role modeling. So I teach a program called the YIPPY program, Youth in Practice with Policing. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a police officer. It just means that teenagers have 8 weeks of paid work during the summer and paid work every weekend if they live in Toronto. And I talk to them about the contents in the book. And I also say, what are some of the things they should do to build a career path? So I do that part of the summer, 1 or 2 days. And I also do that for the Toronto police on a weekend is their program. I also do public speaking. And when I do public speaking, I have an opportunity to market my books. Many individuals will say, you do public speaking, you don't ask for money. I accept honorariums, but I don't ask to be paid. I just want to give back to my community and to see the difference in the lives of young people. I go to the youth shelter. I live in the region of Peel. There are 2 youth shelters that are overflowing every night. Many of those young people do not even think they have any skills to write a resume. So I go on a Wednesday, except COVID shuffled a lot of things for us. I go on a Wednesday afternoon to help young people learn what they can do to manage an interview and how to build a resume so that they will be accepted for that interview. And in all of that, I did a 6-month contract for the CCAC. I don't know if everyone knows that acronym, Community Care Access Center. Because of my background working with youth, they were looking at the violence and mental health in the school. Isn't that a roll around of what is happening now? This I did in 2016. In 2016, I did a paid 6-month contract through CCAC, where I developed a program for registered psychiatric nurses to go into the high schools and work with the principal around the mental health of young people. That program was rolled out and implemented in 6 months. Of course, it's died now as things are getting worse, because as everyone knows, in our school, we are short of some of the personnel. So this is just showing some of the activities that I have been doing, and I go into any space. I've been to mosque, I've been to AGMs. I go to the libraries. I go to schools. I go to universities, because you may hear a nursing faculty say the student pays so much money to come to do nursing education and they're lazy. They're not doing their work. They're wasting their parents' money, but they do not look at the root causes of why is that student showing that behavior? So I go in to help the faculty to understand that behind that student, there was a life before the student became a nursing student. I also go to speak to new social workers, like at OISE, to talk about the kids that they will meet, and please don't judge them by seeing them, know the root causes. Those are a few of the things that I do, and I do take time to exercise and to walk. And I've adopted a poodle, so he makes sure I'm up and I'm out walking and enjoying nature. So I'm having fun in my retirement.
Thanks, Norma. You certainly are the benchmark of all the things that you can accomplish in retirement. Certainly still using all of your skill sets, your knowledge that you've acquired during the years. But that also came with pre-planning. David, one of the things you had done was giving advice on, and you mentioned budgets. I am a big proponent of budgeting. And I want to go back to you and to that particular aspect of pre-planning, because I think that until one sorts of develops habits around budgeting, it will not necessarily help them in the long run. You've got to have a handle on your finances from a very early start. So can we just go back and sort of expand some more on budgeting?
Sure. I think that the very first thing to start with is, sort of itemizing your different expenditures. If you have a car, what does that cost? A lot of people just think about their car cost, but there's gas, there's insurance. Obviously, in the area that we live in, we all have, Amazon Prime, we've got Netflix, we've got all these different, membership services that we pay for. I know there's a lot of apps out there where you can actually sort of sum all of the different expenditures that you have for, the different apps that we, use their services for. So I think, obviously we have a one line item of how much money do we make in a month if we have one source of income. But I think the critical part is to figure out how much are we spending on a monthly basis on every single aspect of our life, kind of down to the penny. That's the best way to sort of uncover how much are we spending. And moreover, once we determine what are we spending on, that's how we can figure out what do we really need from what do we not really need? Do we need to have every single streaming service? Do we have to have, the fanciest car out there? What are the things that we can do to sort of make sure that we are saving or earning more than we're spending?
Yeah. And I think that is so important, because unless we know the areas on which we're spending our money, we don't have a handle on what we can cut back on. If you were to say, for example, if, people who buy Starbucks coffee, which is very expensive, if you were to save the Starbucks money per month, how much are you saving? Can that then be redirected into a retirement savings or something of that nature?
And Jennifer,
go ahead, Herbie.
I'm thinking, should we address the questions in the chat box?
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
One of the questions is there a cost when you're engaging a financial advisor? And if I'm saving $25 a month, do I need to spend money on engaging a financial advisor?
Yes, and that's a very good question. A financial advisor, it depends. A financial advisor is like engaging a lawyer. So what does it cost to engage a lawyer? Well, it depends. It depends on the services you need, the expertise, and the education, the volume, and so on and so forth. Typically, the way financial advisors work is with the volume. The more volume you have, the lower the cost and the more access you have. And you have, if for example, you have $100, $100,000 in savings, then you have access to a certain level of service up to $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and so on and so forth. At $50 per month, typically, if you have a relationship with a major bank or a major credit union, they should be able to set you up on a savings plan and get you started this way. And once you've accumulated enough assets to qualify for professional financial services, then it should be able to help you out. But in terms of specifics, it really depends on how much you have saved. And even at $50 a month, you can have access to really good quality service if your pool of money is, say, $250,000, for example.
Yeah, the question I think was for those people who are starting out and want to save something towards retirement, only can save $50 a month. And if we're saying, speak to somebody, a financial advisor, can we do that? And the answer is yes.
Yes, typically you can. If you have a relationship with one of the major banks or the credit unions, they can certainly get you started on $50 a month for sure.
Thanks, that's good to know. Another question that's come up is, you can collect your CPP at age 60. Should you start withdrawing or accessing your CPP at 60 or wait until you're 65? And I'm going to ask both David and Herbie to speak to this.
Sure, I can go ahead, and maybe David, if you have something else to add afterwards.
Sure.
With this question is very specific to each individual's. It really depends on your personal situation. You got to take into account longevity. Is longevity a thing in your family? Do you think that you live around 85, 95 years old, 100 years old? Or is premature death an issue in your family? And this will weigh in the decision to take CPP early or later. Your tax bracket, what's your situation currently? What's your income? What are the need for the money now versus the money later, and so on and so forth. So in general, typically people start taking their CPP at 65 years old, but there are certain situations where it makes sense to take it early or later. But again, full circle, it makes sense to engage a professional financial advisor to look into your situation more closely and make that determination for you.
Just to add on to that, I mean, it seems like a straightforward question, but it's actually rather specific, sort of following on from what Herbie said, in the sense that everybody's personal situation is very, very different. Once you get to the stage of life where that is part of the conversation, one of the value adds of a financial planner is we have financial programs and modeling tools that we can use to sort of identify, is there an advantage to taking CPP at 65 or deferring it to, who knows, age 70? That's something that is very specific that we'd have to sort of look into, somebody's particular profile to see whether or not it makes sense. So you do have flexibility with when you want to take CPP, but again, it's rather specific to everybody's individual situation. Okay, so
sticking with CPP, because among my friends we talk about CPP. You can access, or you're eligible for CPP when you've worked for a period of time prior to retirement. Is that correct?
CPP would be based on contribution. Yes, there's a portion of how much time you work, but it really depends on the contribution you've made to the plan.
So let us say you've got 40 years of service and you've made a contribution for 40 years, then there's CPP and you'll be eligible, I think, for the maximum amount. And the question that I know my friends and I have said, well, why don't you start taking it at 60? It's your money, take it out earlier, because you never know if you'll live until 65 or beyond. So at least you'll get some returns, you get your money back at an earlier age rather than waiting until 65 or 70. Is there any sort of wisdom in that?
It depends. Really, it's to some people, it makes sense to take it out early, say, oh, you can invest the money or you can do something with it. You don't know where you're going to live. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. You have to make a lot of some assumptions. If this person in your case is worried about premature death at some point, yes, that can weigh into the factor of making that decision. But there are other factors to look at: tax bracket and the need for the money. Do you need the money? Or where is it going to put you in relation to your overall financial situation and so forth? Do you have an investment portfolio? Do you have a pension plan, sponsored government pension plan? So yes, the concern about premature death is a factor you can use to make that decision, but there are other factors you should be looking at as well.
Okay. David, would you like to add anything to that? You need to, I'm sorry, David, you need to unmute.
I'm sorry about that. I think it's just reiterating what we were sort of touching on before, in the sense that it's a very specific question. You know, what works for me might not work for you, Jennifer, in the sense that, you know, we have different, you know, income levels. Or what if I have a retirement property or rental properties, or I have an investment portfolio, you know, that's, you know, paying me more money than I need to live off of. So it really just depends on a specific example of what everyone's profile is.
So what you're saying is that it depends on your financial health,
Exactly.
whether you take it early or you take it later.
Exactly.
And it's not, okay, that makes sense. Now with OAS, some people receive the full amount. Some people receive some amounts and then have it clawed back by the government. Dave, can you explain why that happens?
Well, the clawback is, you know, a lot of it has to do with when you decide to take it. The clawback is based on, same thing with CPP, you pay into it. You can't take it before age 75, so it's a little bit different to CPP. But the clawback really has to do with how much money you're making in all of your retirement profile, your income, your CPP, any other sort of pensionable income.
Okay. Herbie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, if I can just add that the OAS is different than CPP in the sense that to qualify for it, it's not based on contribution. So even if you haven't worked a day and haven't contributed to it, you can still qualify for it. The qualification requirements are after you turn 18 years old in Canada, the numbers of years you've stayed in the country, up to 40 years. So if you've stayed 40 years in the country as a resident, after your 80th birthday, then you qualify for the maximum amount of OAS. Again, there are some exceptions to that, but basically that's usually how it works.
Thank you. It seems to me that certainly when I started working, which was a long time ago, many companies offered pension plans. One of two kinds of pension plans. More and more companies are not offering, many companies are not offering pension plans, but they might be offering other types of benefits. and other types of certainly maybe paying a little more to offset the fact they're not offering pension plans. Both Herbie and David, because you're both wealth management, can you, I think, reiterate the importance of really looking ahead to retirement planning? Let's start with you, Herbie.
Absolutely. If you're fortunate enough to have a employer-sponsored pension plan, you should take full advantage of it. And typically how it works with a defined contribution plan is that you contribute a certain amount and the employer will match up to a certain limit. And it's basically, you can have the opportunity to double your savings. So I would encourage people who have this opportunity to take full advantage of it. And what I would say is most employers now offer defined contribution plans as opposed to defined benefits plans. So these are more government sponsored plans. These are great plans as well. They are indexed to inflation. They cover you for the rest of your life. They have health benefits attached to them. But not everybody is in the position to take advantage of those plans. But if you do, by all means, take full advantage of that. And lastly, I would say that even though you have a pension plan, whether defined benefits or defined contribution, the mistake I see people make is, you know what, my retirement is secure, it's covered, I don't need to save more for my retirement. You don't know if you're going to be employed for this employer for the rest of your career. You might change. You might find another job where they don't offer as much benefits as your previous employer. And to alleviate that risk, it's still a sound idea to save in an investment portfolio and have what I call the trinity, the trifecta of source of income: a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan, government pensions, plus an investment portfolio. And then you allow yourself to be in a really strong financial position when you retire. Because if any of those three fails, then you can rely on the two others and vice versa.
That sounds like very sound advice. David, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the having a job with a pension plan, it's a nice way to look forward to your retirement, in the sense that it's a nice safety net. But as Herbie touched on, it shouldn't stop there. You shouldn't think, okay, well, I've got a great pension and I don't really have to do anything else. I still think it's very important to do, forced savings. Obviously we haven't really touched on it, but you can, look towards like a tax-free savings account or invested in our RRSP. In addition to having, that investment portfolio, which can kind of fall into those two different buckets. But once you, do have a pension plan, or you have an employer matching plan, I think it's a great way to, have a way of modeling your future. We've talked often through this conversation about engaging with a financial planner. And these are all subjects that we touch on, when planning for retirement. One of the key aspects of planning for retirement is to determine how much do we need to make, how much are we making now in our current situation, and how much do we think we're going to need to make or earn in retirement. We kind of call that a lifestyle needs analysis. So what are we spending now versus what are we going to be spending in the future? If we can have as many sources of income in retirement to help fund our lifestyle the way we want to have it, it gives you a lot of options, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and a lot of that would come from early planning.
Thanks. Now, Dave, I'm going to stick with you for a minute. We're winding down. What do you say to someone who thinks that they can fund their retirement through investment in cryptocurrency or buying lottery tickets on a weekly basis?
Well,
both are high risk, but what would you say to someone?
Well, I think, first of all, the cryptocurrency situation has been something that's been highlighted in the news recently as an area not to invest. I wouldn't recommend that to any of my clients in a large way. If they want to invest in it, it's one of those buyer beware sort of situations. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. And I would say if you want to put some money into it, as we've seen over the last few weeks in the news, be prepared to lose that money. So if it's money that you're willing to lose, then so be it. But it's not something that I would ever suggest. It's just a little bit too volatile. Maybe I'm a bit too boring for that, but it's not something that I think is a great place to put your money. As far as the lottery ticket situation, I think it's a case of you need to figure out how much money are you spending on lottery tickets per week, per month, per year. And I think what would be an interesting study is to tally that spend on lottery tickets over the course of a year and think about, what you could have done with that money, whether it's a few $100s or even a few $1,000s. If you had done forced savings and put that into an RSP, if you put it into just a simple savings account, or even use that money to pay down some debts that you have. We're talking about investment portfolios a little bit. If you had that money grow, I'd say, a 5% rate of return, where would you be? And I think, it's a bit of a balance. Obviously playing the lottery can be fun, but we don't want to commit all of our earned income into it.
Thanks. Now we're winding down, so I'm going to go around and give everybody an opportunity to make one last comment that is not a scripted question. Herbie?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jennifer. That was amazing. And lasting comment, all I can say is retirement planning is not an easy proposition to plan for. It's not something that people should take lightly. And the earlier you start, the better it is for people. And very important to engage a financial advisor or a wealth advisor as early as possible in the process to assist you into achieving those goals. And it's not easy. It's not something that can be done easily, but you do have some help, resources, whether you have a relationship with a major bank or a credit union, just have to knock at their door and they should be able to assist you in any way possible or form. But all in all, very much so like you're consulting your doctor, your lawyer. It's well acknowledged that you need that help to be in good health or to have sound financial or sound legal advice. The same way for your retirement. You should take that project very seriously, and then hopefully you can achieve your goals once it's time for you to retire.
Thanks, Herbie. And Norma, any last comment you'd like to make?
I want to add, and thank you for that last comment. I want to add that whether you have a retirement plan with a lot of money, you still need to think of helping others. And if one person helps another, then you can pass this along. So in retirement, I highly suggest doing some volunteer work in whatever area is your passion. It's amazing how in this world, if you reach out and help like an elderly person cross the street, as you sometimes see on YouTube, that eventually someone else will do that. So as you retire, please don't enjoy sitting at home or watching TV. Think of your health. Think of helping someone else. And I have been very fortunate in that I've also started a small business. It is registered as a not-for-profit because it helps me organize when I write, when I market my books, and I have now authored 4 books instead of the one I started with. And I have met more people than I ever did when I was employed. So please get out, walk in nature, help help someone, even if they have a strong retirement plan in place, they still need to keep healthy, have friendships, and socialize. Thank you.
Thanks, Norma. And I'm going to have the last word. I would say volunteer. Shouldn't wait until your retirement. Do it as you work. It expands your horizons, and you can always turn your volunteerism into something more upon retirement. And my bit of financial advice is always pay yourself first. If you make $10, pay yourself, even if it's $2. Always pay yourself first and use that as some starting of savings. So I'd like to thank the panelists for a very stimulating discussion this afternoon. I'm sure there's much more that we could be saying on this topic. It's a very important topic because we're all going to be getting to retirement age. Things are getting more and more difficult in terms of cost of living. And so, as both Dave and Herbie and Norma said, it's never too early to start planning for retirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look how far you have come.